You don't see it coming. The perfect life. The perfect family. The perfect husband. At least, that's what I thought. But the truth? It was something entirely different. It started with a late-night phone call. A soft, familiar voice on the other end, speaking in hushed tones, as if something was wrong. I wasn't sure what it was, but I could hear the tension. There was a shift in the air, something I couldn't quite place. Ethan had always been a man of routine. Work, home, dinner with me and our son, Oliver. We were the ideal family, American dream, wrapped up in a picture-perfect suburban home. Ethan, the tech genius. Me, the stay-at-home mom who loved nothing more than the peaceful life we had built. Or so I thought. But that night, when I overheard him in the kitchen, whispering into his phone, something inside me twisted. I stood frozen, breath held, as I listened to him laughing softly into the receiver, too carefree for my taste. And then I heard it, the name. Grace. Grace. She was one of my closest friends. I had introduced her to Ethan years ago. Her laugh always filled the room. Her beauty was as effortless as mine was, and I never questioned her motives. That was the problem, wasn't it? I never questioned. But tonight, I would. I had no solid proof, yet. But I knew. I had always been the one who could read between the lines, to see what wasn't said, to feel the undercurrents of tension when no one else could. This wasn't just a late-night phone call. This was something darker, something more sinister. And in that moment, a cold dread washed over me. I needed answers. I could hear Ethan walking up the stairs, his footsteps too light, too rehearsed. His usual carefree demeanor was replaced with something more guarded, like he was trying to hide something. Charlotte. His voice came through the door, and I forced a smile, pretending I hadn't been eavesdropping. You okay? Just thinking, I replied, turning back to face him with my best casual smile. About what? I shrugged, trying to act nonchalant. I don't know. Just the usual stuff. Work, Oliver, you. He gave me a half smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. You sure you're all right? His voice had softened, the concern almost too much for me to take. The words caught in my throat. Should I confront him now? Should I ask about Grace, about that phone call? But I couldn't, not yet. I needed more, proof. This wasn't just some wild assumption. This was the truth I had to unearth, no matter the cost. Over the next few weeks, things only grew more unsettling. Ethan's late nights at the office turned into mysterious, business trips that I never questioned before. But now, something inside me shifted. I paid attention to the small things, his sudden need to work late, the way his phone would light up with text messages that he quickly dismissed whenever I entered the room. I wasn't stupid. I had been married to Ethan for nearly 12 years. I knew his habits better than anyone. And this wasn't normal. That's when I started to notice it, how Grace's name kept appearing. Not just in his phone, but in their conversations. Subtle things. Small clues that most people would ignore. But not me. I couldn't stop myself. Every conversation he had with Grace was followed by a tight-lipped smile, a nervous glance my way, as if I wouldn't see what was right in front of me. The lies were too clean, too perfect, to be just coincidence. I knew, deep down, that something was happening. But what? I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't let him walk all over me. Not this time. It was a Tuesday when I decided to take the first step. I'd waited long enough, but now I needed more than just gut feelings. I needed the truth. I started by tracking his phone, carefully, subtly. One message at a time. His emails, his schedule. Every small detail. My heart raced as I uncovered more. There it was, evidence, proof that he had been hiding something. A dinner invitation. A hotel reservation. Everything pointing to Grace. But the truth was more twisted than I could ever have imagined. I followed his trail to a meeting at a restaurant, hoping for answers. What I didn't expect was to walk in and find him sitting at a corner booth with Grace. They were close, too close. Their chemistry, their glances, it was more than I had feared. They were too comfortable together. Too familiar. And I could feel it. The sharp ache of betrayal, the sting of something I had never imagined would happen to me. To us. As I walked out of that restaurant, something inside me shifted. I had the proof. But more than that, I had the power. The power to expose everything. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I would make them face the consequences of their lies. But not yet. Not now. That night, I lay in bed next to Ethan, pretending to sleep while the anger boiled inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw it all in his face. But I wouldn't. Not yet. I had learned one thing over the years: patience was power. And I had time on my side. I smiled to myself, knowing this was just the beginning. The game had changed. And now, I was ready to play. I wasn't going to let this go. Not when I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right, and not when the evidence was right under my nose. Over the next few days, I played the part of the dutiful wife. I smiled at Ethan, listened as he talked about his late-night business calls, and kissed him goodbye as he headed out for what seemed like endless trips. But inside, my mind was working overtime. I had to know the truth. I kept digging. It wasn't difficult to track his phone after I figured out where he'd been spending his late nights. One night, I followed him, discreetly, of course. I wasn't looking to start a scene, I just needed answers. I trailed him to a small cafe in the city, a place he had never mentioned before. He had told me he was working, but instead of his usual office hours, he was meeting Grace there. They were seated at a quiet corner table, and I watched as they laughed together, exchanging smiles that were far too intimate for my liking. Grace was leaning in a little too close, her hand grazing Ethan's in a way that made my stomach turn. I was angry. Furious. But I wasn't ready to confront them yet. Not when I still didn't have the whole picture. I couldn't act on impulse. I needed to know more. I spent the next few days gathering every shred of information I could find. Texts, emails, phone records, nothing was off limits. Every time Ethan left his phone lying around, I seized the opportunity. It wasn't about spying, it was about protecting myself. And then it happened. The text that confirmed everything. It was late one evening, and Ethan's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I couldn't help myself. I picked it up. The message read, "I'm counting the days until we can finally be together. I miss you so much. Let's make plans this weekend." The sender? Grace. I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or throw the phone across the room. But I didn't do any of those things. I stayed calm, collecting myself. I had what I needed. But I still needed a plan. It was clear now, Ethan and Grace had been more than just friends. Their relationship wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown betrayal of everything we had built. But there was still one thing I didn't understand: why Grace? Why her, of all people? I started connecting the dots. Grace wasn't just a close friend. She had always been there, always by my side. But I had never really asked myself why. She was charming, yes, but there was something else beneath the surface. Something I hadn't seen until now. And then I remembered the conversation we had a year ago. Grace had mentioned something about a business deal, something vague about an investment opportunity that would secure their futures. At the time, I had brushed it off as just another one of her grand schemes, but now, I realized what she meant. Ethan had been involved in a shady deal with her. Not just emotionally, financially too. It wasn't just love they were playing with. It was money. And power. I decided to confront her, not with aggression, but with strategy. She wouldn't expect me to know everything. I would catch her off guard. I arranged to meet Grace at the park one afternoon. Just us. No one else. She was always happy to meet for coffee, and this would be no different. When she sat down across from me, I forced a smile. "How have you been, Grace?" "Good," she replied with her usual brightness, her smile so rehearsed it made me sick. "You?" "I'm good." I paused. "You and Ethan have been spending a lot of time together lately." Her face froze for a split second, just long enough for me to catch it. She quickly recovered, but it was too late. The crack in her facade was all I needed. "We're just friends," she said with a soft laugh. "You know that. He's a good guy. You're lucky to have him." I smiled again, a tight smile. "I know." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. "But I don't think that's all it is. You've been texting him, meeting him in secret. You've been hiding something from me, Grace." Her eyes flickered, and for the first time, I saw fear in them. "Charlotte, you don't understand." "Don't lie to me," I said sharply, cutting her off. "I know about you and him. I know everything." Her face went pale, but she didn't say anything. She knew I was right. She knew that the game had changed. That night, I didn't confront Ethan. I didn't scream or cry. I didn't break anything. Instead, I let him believe everything was fine. He kissed me goodbye the next morning with his usual air of indifference. But I knew that something was going to shift. As I watched him walk out the door, I made a decision. I wouldn't just walk away from this. No. I would make him regret it. I would make him feel every ounce of the betrayal he'd put me through. But I couldn't just rush in blindly. I had to be smart. I had to be strategic. The next step was crucial, gathering allies. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed leverage, and I needed people on my side. I reached out to someone I trusted, someone who had always been in the background of my life, Laura, my other close friend. I had never fully trusted her, but she was my only option now. I needed her help to expose everything. I made sure to keep the conversation casual at first. We met at a cafe in the city, a neutral ground. As soon as she sat down, I jumped right in. "Laura, I need your help," I said, locking eyes with her. "I know what's been going on with Ethan and Grace. I need to bring everything into the open." Her expression didn't change. "Charlotte, you don't want to do that," she warned me, her voice dropping low. But I wasn't going to back down. "I'm not asking you, Laura. I'm telling you. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about exposing the truth. If we do this right, it's not just Ethan who'll fall. Grace will too. And you, if you're involved in this, you'll be next." The tension was building. I was playing my cards perfectly, and I knew it. The pieces were falling into place. All I needed was one last move. It wasn't until a week later that I finally decided to confront Ethan. The longer I waited, the more the anger inside me built up. The calm I had shown was nothing but a facade. The truth was, I was ready for the storm. But first, I needed to make sure everything was in place. I had spent too many nights pacing, collecting evidence, talking to people. I couldn't back out now. The day came when everything lined up perfectly. I had everything I needed. Texts. Proof of meetings. Grace's involvement. The shady deal. It was all tied together. And now, I was ready to make them all face the consequences of their actions. I wasn't just going to tell Ethan what I knew, I was going to expose it. I wanted him to feel the weight of his lies crashing down on him, just like I had. That afternoon, I told him to come home early. I didn't give him any context. I didn't need to. This wasn't about being nice anymore. This was about power. Ethan walked in, his usual smile faded by the solemn tone in my voice. He knew something was off, but he didn't know how much. "Hey, Charlotte. What's going on?" he asked, as he took off his jacket and set down his briefcase. I crossed my arms and looked at him. "Sit down, Ethan. We need to talk." He frowned, a hint of worry crossing his face. "Is everything okay?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached over to the table where I'd placed the evidence. I slowly laid out the printed texts, emails, and photos, the kind of proof that would haunt him. It wasn't just Grace anymore. There were other details in those documents that I knew would shake him to his core. It wasn't just betrayal. It was everything. "I've been gathering some information, Ethan," I began, my voice low, but steady. "And I've learned a lot. About you. About Grace. And about the deal you've been hiding." His eyes widened, but he didn't speak. He didn't have to. "Grace isn't just a friend of yours, is she?" I continued, my voice steady but sharp, like a knife cutting through the air. "You've been lying to me for months. To both of us. And what's worse? You were in it for the money too. I've seen the emails, the meetings you set up with her. You were planning to use me, Ethan. And I let you." He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. "No, Ethan. You don't get to talk. Not yet." The silence between us was thick with tension. I could see the panic starting to set in on his face. The calm, collected man I had married was starting to crack. "Charlotte, I didn't mean for this to happen," he stammered. "Grace, it's not what you think. I didn't plan on this." "Stop." I snapped. "You didn't plan for this? Ethan, do you honestly think I'm stupid? You've been sneaking around with her, lying to me, and manipulating our lives for months. And now you expect me to believe that it wasn't planned?" I stood up, pacing back and forth, the anger surging. "And don't even try to tell me this was some kind of mistake, because I know better. Grace, your affair, the shady business deals, this was all calculated, Ethan. You used me, used our family to cover up your lies." He flinched at my words. I could see his jaw tightening, but he wasn't speaking. "Good. Let him stew in his guilt. And Laura," I added, throwing the final bombshell. "Your little business partner. She knew. She was in on it from the start. She covered for you, she enabled this. So tell me, Ethan, is this all just a string of accidents, or is this who you've become?" His eyes dropped to the floor. I saw the guilt and shame finally hitting him. The man who had once seemed invincible was breaking down right in front of me. The next few days were nothing short of a storm. Ethan was practically begging for forgiveness. He apologized over and over, promised to do anything to make things right, but his words were hollow. Every apology felt like another lie. I listened to him, but in my heart, I knew the truth. He had betrayed me. He had betrayed us. And now, no matter how much he begged, nothing would ever be the same. The shock came when Grace tried to reach out to me. She sent a long text, filled with excuses and half-hearted apologies. She begged me not to tear their lives apart, pleading for my forgiveness. But I wasn't the fool anymore. Instead of responding right away, I called Laura. I had to know where her loyalty really lay. I wasn't going to let her slip through the cracks. If she thought she could get away with this, she was wrong. We met at a cafe, the place we used to go all the time before all of this. She looked nervous as she sat down. "Charlotte, you know I didn't want this," she started, her voice quiet. "I never meant for it to get this far." "Then why did you let it happen, Laura?" I asked coldly. "Why did you cover for him?" "For Grace." She sighed, the weight of her guilt heavy in the air. "It wasn't just about them. I had my own reasons. I was trying to protect myself, my own interests. I thought if I played along, I could get something out of it. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. And what was that? Money? Power? Your own selfish needs. You let your friend fall apart because of your own insecurities. You're just as bad as they are, Laura. Tears welled up in her eyes. I'm sorry, Charlotte. I was wrong. But the apology came too late. With everything out in the open, I took control. I wasn't just going to let this go. I filed for divorce. I made sure that everything Ethan had worked for, his business, his reputation, everything, was on the line. I was done playing the victim. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Ethan had destroyed our family, and it was time he faced the consequences of his actions. But I wasn't done yet. I took everything I had learned, everything I had uncovered, and I exposed it. The affair. The money. The betrayal. I made sure the truth got out, far and wide. Ethan and Grace's lies would be their undoing, and I wasn't going to protect them anymore. As for Laura, she lost her place in my life too. No one who betrayed me deserved to stay close. Months passed. The dust settled. Ethan lost everything, the business, his reputation, his connections. But I moved on. With Oliver by my side, I built a new life for us. A better one. A stronger one. One that didn't rely on the lies and manipulation that had once held me hostage. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. The calm after the storm wasn't what I expected. It wasn't relief, nor was it closure. It was something deeper. A strange sense of justice, mixed with a lingering bitterness that wouldn't quite fade. When Ethan's world collapsed, mine didn't. The pieces of my life had already fallen into place, and I was rebuilding. But I knew this wasn't over yet. There was still the aftermath to handle. After filing for divorce, I knew I had to make sure the truth came out. I couldn't let Ethan and Grace think they could walk away unscathed. I spent weeks gathering everything I could find, the proof, the emails, the meetings, all the lies they'd hidden behind closed doors. And then, I did what no one expected. I went public. I made sure the media got a hold of the story. Not just a local news outlet. No. I sent it to everyone, any outlet that would cover it. I wasn't going to let them spin their version of the truth. Ethan, the man who built his career on trust and reputation, was about to lose everything. And Grace? She had no idea the storm that was coming. I watched as their world crumbled. The phone calls, the texts, the emails, they were everywhere. Grace's carefully crafted image shattered. The business deals that she'd promised to bring to the table. Gone. But what really hit home for me was watching Ethan's fall. His business, built on lies, was slowly taken down. Investors pulled out, clients backed away, and his partners began distancing themselves. Ethan, who had always been the one in control, was now scrambling. I wasn't the only one who saw him for what he truly was. And still, he tried to make it right. One evening, weeks after the media storm had settled, Ethan reached out again. I hadn't heard from him directly since the divorce papers were signed. I figured he'd given up, but clearly, I was wrong. I sat in my office, staring at the phone in my hand. The screen lit up with his name. I knew what this was. It was his final attempt to pull me back in, to make everything go away. I wasn't about to fall for it again. But I knew I had to hear him out. Maybe I could get some closure, maybe not. But I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. Charlotte, he said, his voice tired but desperate. We need to talk. About what? I asked, keeping my voice steady. There's nothing to talk about anymore, Ethan. I can explain everything, he begged. I know I screwed up. I've lost everything. I made a mistake. I need you to understand, Charlotte. You have to know that it was never about you. I felt the sting of his words, but I didn't let it show. Don't make this about me. This is on you. You ruined this. You destroyed everything we built. He sighed, the weight of regret heavy in his voice. I was stupid. But Grace, it wasn't supposed to go that far. I was just looking for an escape, Charlotte. I was overwhelmed, and I thought it would make things better. I'm sorry. Sorry. That doesn't fix anything, Ethan. I paused, letting the silence hang between us. You don't get to apologize and expect everything to magically go back to normal. You've taken everything from me, and I'm done. After the final confrontation with Ethan, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had nothing left to prove to him. Or to anyone else, for that matter. But there was still the matter of moving forward. And it wasn't easy. The public fallout had shaken me, but I had learned something valuable in the process. I had learned how strong I really was. Oliver had been my anchor through all of this. Even when the world was falling apart around us, he remained a constant. I wanted more than anything to give him the life he deserved, one free of the drama and lies that had nearly torn us apart. Slowly, I started rebuilding. I took on work that allowed me to use my skills in ways I had never imagined. I worked on projects that made me feel fulfilled, both professionally and personally. And then, one day, I met someone. Not someone who would replace Ethan. Not someone who would fill the void. But someone who helped me understand that there was life beyond betrayal. We started slowly. Coffee dates. Quiet conversations. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself be open to the possibility of happiness again. Some might call what I did revenge. Others might say I was just standing up for myself. But in the end, it wasn't really about vengeance. It was about taking control of my life again. Ethan had taken so much from me, my trust, my happiness, my peace of mind. But in the end, it was him who lost the most. His reputation was in tatters, his business crumbled, and his world was nothing more than a series of broken promises. Grace. She disappeared from the public eye. No one wanted anything to do with her after the scandal. The world they had built together, constructed from lies, fell apart just as quickly as it had been created. As for me, I wasn't focused on them anymore. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, they were all in the past. The life I was building now, with Oliver, was everything I needed. And every day, I grew stronger. Wiser. Happier. I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about watching someone fall. It's about walking away and letting them fade into the background while you rise above it all. Time passed, and the noise around me faded. The court cases, the media attention, the gossip, it all slowly simmered down. But one thing remained clear, I had come out of it stronger than I had ever been. Ethan tried to reach out a few more times, but I didn't answer. He couldn't hurt me anymore. And Grace? She was nothing but a distant memory, a footnote in a chapter one had long since closed. As for me, I had finally found peace. I had learned how to rebuild my life from the ground up, and now, I was ready for whatever came next. I looked out the window one evening, watching the sunset, and realized that everything had changed. But I was no longer afraid. I was free. And that was all that mattered. Months passed since the final confrontation with Ethan. Life began to find its rhythm again, quieter, less complicated. But I knew that the scars from the past would never truly fade. They'd become part of me, part of my story. But I wasn't living in the past anymore. I was building a future. I had spent so much time healing, not just for me, but for Oliver, too. He had been the center of my world throughout all of this, the one constant. I wanted him to grow up in a home filled with peace and love, not the chaos and bitterness of betrayal. Oliver, in his own way, was adjusting. He was a smart kid, he picked up on the tension even before things were fully exposed. But now, seeing him more settled and happy, I knew I was doing the right thing. I'd never imagined myself being here, living alone with Oliver, rebuilding a life from the ground up. But I had to admit, there was a strange sense of freedom in it. The house felt like my own, the space was mine to fill with whatever I chose. One evening, as I was sorting through papers on my desk, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "Charlotte, we need to talk. It's about Oliver." I felt a chill run down my spine. Who would be reaching out to me about my son? I stared at the message for a while, contemplating whether I should respond. I had no idea what this was about. Before I could think any further, my phone rang. It was Laura. The last time I saw her was at the cafe, where I had all but cut her out of my life. She had been a part of the betrayal, and even though she apologized, I never fully trusted her again. But now, with this mysterious message, I knew I had to hear her out. "Charlotte." Laura's voice sounded soft, hesitant. "What is this about Oliver?" I asked sharply, trying not to sound as anxious as I felt. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," she started, "but there's something you need to know. I don't know all the details, but Ethan's been acting strange. He's been trying to get in touch with me again. I think he's planning something that could hurt Oliver." I didn't want to believe what Laura was saying, but something in her voice made me listen. "Why would he involve you in this, Laura?" I asked. "You already did enough damage by helping him and Grace. Why now?" "Because," she hesitated, "he's desperate. Ethan thinks he can fix things, but he doesn't realize how deep in trouble he really is. He's been reaching out to me about Oliver, about using him to get what he wants." My stomach dropped. "Ethan wants to use Oliver?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Laura explained that Ethan had been trying to get closer to Oliver, trying to mend the broken father-son relationship that had shattered during the divorce. But it didn't seem like he wanted to fix things for the right reasons. It felt like he was attempting to manipulate the situation to gain some leverage, to get back into my life, and to play the doting father role in front of Oliver, so he could look good in front of others. "Charlotte, I didn't want to be a part of this anymore," Laura added. "I thought you should know. He's not the man you thought he was, and he's getting worse." I didn't have time to dwell on the shock. I had to act fast. Ethan's manipulation of our son was the last straw. I had spent too many months hiding from the reality of our broken marriage. I wasn't going to let him ruin Oliver's life, too. I thought of all the ways Ethan had already hurt me, emotionally, financially, and now with Oliver. He couldn't just walk back into our lives because he was feeling guilty. I knew I had to shut him down, for good. I couldn't let him manipulate me again. Not with my son. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. It was time to take legal action to protect Oliver from any further attempts at manipulation. I needed full custody, no visitation rights. Ethan had already proven that he couldn't be trusted. I couldn't let him play the victim anymore. He had betrayed me and he was trying to repeat that betrayal with our child. As I prepared for the custody battle, I realized I wasn't just fighting for Oliver's future, but for my own peace of mind. Ethan's reach was long, and I had no idea how far he would go to manipulate the situation. But this time, I was prepared. I gathered all the evidence, texts, emails, everything I had accumulated during the divorce. I made sure every conversation, every manipulation, every lie was documented. This wasn't just about Oliver's safety, it was about making sure Ethan couldn't slip back into our lives when it was convenient for him. I also started making some major changes in my life. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with during the chaos. I took up new hobbies. I started going to therapy, learning how to take care of myself, not just emotionally, but physically and mentally. I had spent so many years living for someone else, for the perfect family. It was time to focus on myself. And Oliver? He was thriving. We spent more time together, just the two of us. It was during this period that I began to realize just how strong we were, how resilient we had become. The day of the custody hearing arrived. I sat in the cold courtroom, nervously waiting for the judge to call us up. My lawyer sat beside me, offering reassurance, but I could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a fight for my son's future. Ethan arrived, his usual confidence replaced by a stiff, nervous demeanor. He knew what was at stake, and he knew he was in the wrong. As we exchanged our arguments in front of the judge, I watched him struggle. Ethan's once impressive confidence crumbled as he tried to justify his behavior. His apologies seemed hollow, as though he was just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. But I wasn't buying it anymore. Not this time. When it was my turn, I stood tall. I didn't feel the fear I thought I would. I had nothing to hide. I spoke about the manipulation, the lies, and the way he had abandoned both me and Oliver. I painted a picture of a man who had lost everything, not because of external forces, but because of his own actions. The judge listened intently, taking note of everything. In the end, the decision was made. Full custody was granted to me, with no visitation rights for Ethan until he proved he could be a responsible parent. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But this wasn't just a win for me, it was a win for Oliver. Life after the court hearing settled into a new routine. I had everything I needed to keep moving forward: Oliver, my strength, my newfound sense of purpose. Ethan had been completely shut out, and I knew that he would never be a part of our lives again unless he truly changed. But I wasn't going to wait around for that to happen. For the first time, I felt free. The weight of betrayal had been lifted, and I was free to create the life I deserved, the life I wanted for me and my son. The weeks following the court decision were some of the most peaceful I had felt in years. Life without Ethan's constant presence was surreal at first, like the air had cleared. No more walking on eggshells, no more wondering when the next betrayal would come. The tension that once hung like a cloud in our home was gone, replaced by a calm I hadn't even realized we were missing. Oliver and I settled into our new routine. I made sure to prioritize him, taking him to soccer practice, helping with school projects, and just spending time together. We hadn't had this kind of normalcy in ages, and it felt good to be his mom again, without the distraction of drama. I also started focusing more on myself. I joined a yoga class, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had supported me in the background, offering strength even when I couldn't ask for it. Slowly, I began to rebuild parts of myself that had been lost in the chaos of the past few years. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon when I ran into someone unexpected. I was at the grocery store, picking up a few things for dinner, when I turned the corner and bumped into Ryan, an old acquaintance from college. I hadn't seen him in years, but there was something about him that made me pause. "Charlotte," he said, a surprised look crossing his face. "Wow, long time no see." I smiled, a little caught off guard, but grateful for the break in routine. "Ryan. Wow, it's been forever. How have you been?" We exchanged pleasantries, catching up on the usual life updates. He was living in town now, recently separated, and looking for new opportunities. There was an easy camaraderie between us, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, something warm, something promising. We didn't talk much about my past with Ethan, there was no need to. But as we said our goodbyes, Ryan mentioned something that made me pause. "Hey, if you're ever up for grabbing coffee or lunch sometime, let me know. It'd be great to catch up more." I wasn't sure why, but the invitation felt different. It felt light, no pressure, just two people reconnecting. Over the following weeks, Ryan and I kept in touch. It started with a casual coffee date, then a lunch, and eventually a dinner. We laughed a lot, shared stories, and discussed everything from the mundane to our deepest thoughts. There was no rush, no expectations. For once, I didn't feel like I was being pushed into something. Ryan wasn't trying to fix anything. He wasn't trying to be my knight in shining armor. He simply enjoyed spending time with me, and I found that refreshing. But even though he was kind and genuine, there was still a part of me that wasn't ready to fully open up. I had been hurt before. And though I had let go of much of the bitterness Ethan had caused, the scars remained. Ryan understood that. He never pushed for anything more than friendship, and that made me trust him. One evening, after a particularly long day, Ryan called me. "I don't know if this is too forward," he said, "but would you want to do something a little different this weekend? I'm thinking a hike, maybe lunch afterward. Just a simple day out. No strings attached." I laughed, feeling a mix of relief and hesitation. "That sounds great, actually." I wasn't sure where it would go, or if it was even right for me to be entertaining the idea of dating again. But for the first time in a long time, I was open to the possibility. The hike with Ryan was nothing like I had expected. It was casual, easygoing. We walked side by side, talking about everything and nothing. And for the first time in months, I didn't think about Ethan or the heartbreak I had endured. It was just Ryan and me, enjoying each other's company, with no pressure. By the time we reached the top of the hill, I felt different, like I had stepped out of a fog and into something clearer. I wasn't running from my past anymore. I wasn't running from the hurt. I had faced it, head on, and come out stronger. Ryan and I sat on a bench, overlooking the view. "You know, I really enjoy spending time with you," he said, his voice soft. "And I just want you to know that there's no rush with anything. If this is something you want to explore, I'm here. If not, I'm still happy to be your friend." I smiled, feeling the weight of those words. He wasn't pushing, wasn't rushing me. He was respecting where I was in my life. And that felt right. Months passed, and things with Ryan grew naturally. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, it was slow, thoughtful, and based on real friendship. I'd always believed in love that grew steadily, that was built on trust and mutual respect. And slowly, I started to feel those things again. But I wasn't naive enough to forget the lessons I'd learned. I was careful. I was cautious. I had learned from my past mistakes, and now, I wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, but I wasn't going to rush into something that wasn't right. Then one evening, as we were having dinner, Ryan looked at me with sincerity in his eyes. "I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Charlotte. And I know this might sound like a lot, but I just want to say that I'm here for you. I want to be here, for you, and for Oliver. Whatever that means." The sincerity in his words, the warmth in his tone, made me realize something. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of taking the next step. I was ready. Ready for something real. "I think I'm ready too," I said, feeling a mix of relief and excitement. Ryan and I moved forward slowly but steadily. We both knew that this wasn't a fairy tale, but something more grounded and real. I still had my guard up, and so did he. We were both healing from past relationships, but we found comfort in each other's company. Ryan was good to Oliver. He respected the boundaries I had set for our family, never pushing, just quietly becoming part of our lives. He and Oliver got along well, and that was important to me. In the months that followed, I realized that my life had taken a new turn, one I hadn't seen coming, but one I was grateful for. I wasn't just moving on from my past, I was building something new, with someone who valued me for who I was. I had learned the hard way that life doesn't always go as planned. But in the end, I found peace. I found love again, but this time, it was on my own terms. As time passed, I grew accustomed to this new life, one where I no longer had to constantly look over my shoulder or second-guess my every decision. There was peace in my daily routine now. With Oliver thriving, my career taking shape again, and Ryan in my life, things felt balanced. But balance isn't something you find overnight. It took me months to realize that healing wasn't just about moving on from my past. It was about learning to balance my old self with the person I was becoming. Ryan had become a steady presence, but he respected the pace I set. We didn't rush into anything, it was slow, intentional. That's what I needed. There was no more pressure to rebuild a life to meet anyone's expectations. It was just about us, my son and me, and now, Ryan. One night, after a dinner with Oliver and Ryan, we sat on the couch, just chatting. It felt easy. Comfortable. "I'm really happy, Charlotte," Ryan said, his voice sincere. "I'm glad we're doing this, doing it right." I smiled, realizing just how far I'd come. Me too. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about Ethan or the past anymore. I was thinking about the future, our future. It wasn't long before life threw us a curveball. One afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. Ethan was back in the picture. He was seeking visitation rights, and he wasn't going to give up without a fight. My heart sank. I had worked so hard to keep him out of our lives, to protect Oliver. I had hoped that after everything, he would just stay away. But he wasn't done yet. As I hung up the phone, a wave of frustration hit me. I had moved on. I had rebuilt, step by step, and now he was trying to push his way back in. Ryan saw the shift in my mood and asked, "What happened?" I explained, my voice thick with emotion. "Ethan's trying to come back into Oliver's life. He wants visitation rights, and I don't know how to stop him." Ryan's expression softened, and he reached for my hand. "We'll figure this out together. You don't have to face this alone." It felt reassuring to have him by my side, but the reality of the situation hit hard. The peace I had fought so hard to secure was being threatened. And once again, I had to stand strong for my son. The legal battle over visitation rights was nothing like I had imagined. I had prepared myself for many things, but this test of my resilience, of my commitment to protecting Oliver, was one of the hardest. The courtroom was cold and sterile, the walls echoing with the words of lawyers fighting for what they thought was best. But I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for my son's future. Ethan tried to present himself as a changed man. He talked about regret, about wanting to be a part of Oliver's life again. I could see the facade he put on. He wasn't here because he cared about Oliver. He was here because he wanted to regain control, to fix the pieces of his life that had shattered. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I had already faced him once, and I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. I spoke calmly and firmly, explaining how Ethan's actions had affected me and, more importantly, how they had affected Oliver. "I'm not against him being a father to Oliver," I said, my voice steady. "But he needs to prove that he can be a responsible parent. He hasn't done that. He doesn't get to walk back into our lives just because he feels guilty." The judge listened attentively. Ethan's lawyer tried to paint me as the angry ex-wife, but it didn't work. The facts were clear. Ethan had not changed. When the ruling came down, it was in my favor. The judge agreed that Ethan could not have unsupervised visits with Oliver until he completed a series of parenting courses and proved he could be a stable presence in his life. After the legal battle, the weight that had been on my shoulders for so long was finally lifted. Ethan had lost, and I had won, but the real victory was for Oliver. There was no rush to push Oliver into a relationship with his father. He was still young, and his emotional well-being came first. As for me, I didn't feel anger anymore. It wasn't about revenge, it was about taking back control of my life and ensuring that my son didn't have to deal with the mess Ethan had created. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on everything I had gone through. The pain. The betrayal. The anger. But I also found gratitude for the lessons I had learned, the strength I never knew I had, and the people, like Ryan, who had supported me along the way. As the weeks passed, things continued to improve. Ryan and I grew closer, but there was no pressure. We were building something real, something based on mutual respect and understanding. One evening, after a quiet dinner with Oliver and Ryan, we were sitting outside on the porch, enjoying the evening breeze. Ryan turned to me and said, "Charlotte, I know we've taken this slow, and I respect that. But I need you to know that I'm all in. I want this, with you. With Oliver." For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of my past truly lift off my shoulders. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't running from anything. "I want this too, Ryan," I said, my voice soft. "But it's not just about me anymore. It's about us. About Oliver. We're a family now, and I want to build that together." Ryan smiled, his eyes full of warmth and sincerity. "We already are." As the months passed, the bonds between Ryan, Oliver, and me deepened. We weren't perfect, but we were real. The life I had once thought was lost to me was now mine to build again. And this time, it was better. This time, it was ours. Ethan remained out of the picture, as he had been ordered to stay away unless he could show he was capable of being a responsible parent. I had no expectations of him, only the hope that he would learn and grow, for his own sake. But for now, I had everything I needed. Oliver was safe, happy, and surrounded by love. Ryan and I were growing together, taking each day as it came. And I had learned that no matter how many times life knocked me down, I could always rise again. This was my new beginning. Charlotte's journey comes full circle. From heartbreak and betrayal, to strength and self-discovery, she finds peace, love, and a new family. This story speaks to the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for yourself and your loved ones, and the beauty of healing after hardship. It shows that while life may throw us curveballs, with determination and support, we can always build a better future. Thank you for following Charlotte's journey. Life doesn't always turn out as we plan, but sometimes, it turns out even better.